Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. We had a lot of people registered, but it is a Sunday morning, so we know that folks are going to trickle in slowly but surely, but we're actually happy to be recording this session, inshallah, for the benefit of the community. This is our second workshop in the parenting workshop series that will be lasting through June, inshallah ta'ala, with the exception of Ramadan. But we should have one before and one after. For those of you who haven't signed up for the Adam's Parenting WhatsApp group, please do that. Inshallah, you can see me after the session and we can get you on board with that. And without further ado, we're just going to go ahead and start with our guest speakers. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyida al-Mursaleen, Sayyidina wa Habibina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in, wa sallim tasliman kathira. I want to welcome you to our second Adam's Parenting series, and in this one, we'll be talking about early childhood, which are ages birth through 4. And I'm really excited to be joined with my special guest speakers today, former colleagues, very close friends of mine. I'm really happy to have here. This is Muzna Khan. Muzna started her childhood education career with me at Al-Fatah Academy. She was my co-teacher and my mentee. When she was a second grade teacher, and then moved on to get her master's degree in school counseling, and she served as a school counselor for Al-Fatah too. I'll let her give her own brief background and introduction. Sayyida, Rahim, is also a really close friend of mine, long-time early childhood educator for Al-Fatah Academy as well, and teacher to at least one of my kids. Well, both of them are teachers to my kids. And just a phenomenal expert in early childhood education. So I'll let them give you a little bit of their own background, but I'm super, super excited to have them here with us and to have them presenting this material. So bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي امري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Muzna Khan. Like Ustadha Kobir mentioned, when I first moved here to Virginia, alhamdulillah, I had the opportunity to work with her. She was a mentor for me, and I feel like a lot of the groundwork of my understanding of parenting and early childhood stems from seeing her model how she parented her children. And I know last month with her introduction talk, she focused a lot on creating a vision, right? Beginning with the end in mind. So today, inshallah, we're going to be focusing on the ages birth to age 4, and sort of like looking at the big picture before we even get into infancy, toddlerhood, and early childhood. I'll let Sayyida introduce herself.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sayyida Rahim. When I first came to the Adams community from New York via Seattle, Washington, and I had my daughter, I knew then that she was 3 years old, and she did not take well to the public school system, meaning the daycare system. And I knew then that it was up to me to pull back from working to assist her in her developmental years. So I went to the masjid and met Hifa and Rahim, and they were starting our Fatah Academy. So at that point, I told them that I could help them in any way. And then they called me on it 2 months later, so the beginning of Al Fatah Academy I started with them. And it was for the purpose, for what they were doing for their own children, I knew I needed to do it for my own daughter, and also be part of developing a school for the larger community of Muslims. Because what we wanted in a public school system we couldn't get, so we had to do that for the larger Muslim community. And so I dove into the early childhood education because that being foundational, that being the start, that being what builds later years, it is the most important for developing our children to become independent adults, as well as Islamically, we also taught the first 7 years are the most important. So I felt like Allah had given me that in my heart, plus my mom being a teacher and a principal growing up, that was something that I could offer the community as well as benefit and just have the blessings from that, inshallah.
So I also have 3 young boys. They're 8, 5, and almost 2. And I feel like even with all of the background in education and training, I didn't fully immerse myself and truly enjoy the blessing that I had until maybe a couple of years ago, honestly speaking. I think a lot of times we read all the books and do all of the things and go to all of the classes, but to truly appreciate children as a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you internalize that and when you really focus on like, wow, this is an aman, this is a trust for me to do my very best, then we look back and we try to implement all the things that we learned and try to do our best in parents with ihsan. So inshallah, today we're going to talk about the different stages of development with regards to birth to age 4. We'll also talk about Islamic parenting and, as Sayyida mentioned, the whole first 7 years and what that really looks like and what that means for us as Muslim parents. And finally, we'll address some common concerns that we may have with regards to children in this age group. So, yay, alhamdulillah. Let's first get started with a little turn and talk to your neighbor. So a lot of times we hear the phrase that you're parenting in a bubble, right? And that can be seen as a negative construct or a positive construct, depending on who you're talking to. But what I'd like to introduce to you all is an idea that it's not a bubble, it's a greenhouse. And so what do you do in a greenhouse? You plant your plants and they firm they get their roots and they're deeply rooted in their foundation. You provide the most nutrient-rich environment and soil. You let the light in. You're not shielding them from everything going on outside the world, but you're taking in only the very best, right? You're building up those kids of yours before you plant them outside in the world. And so when you parent, and you think of it like that, I'm parenting them, they're in a greenhouse, I need to cultivate these babies of mine before I plant them out into the world. How can that then frame your thinking and how can it relate to your own family's needs? So you're welcome to talk to each other or raise your hand and we can get this conversation started, inshallah. What do you guys think? What does that look like for you in thinking of it as a greenhouse versus a bubble?
I mean, what do you do before you plant your seeds? You sort of germinate them, right? You get them started, you give them a little water, of course the air, and they're not in the soil yet. You pre-seed it, kind of, right? And of course there's a dua that we have because it's not always gonna turn out the way we want it to, but you're trying our best. So before you push them out into the big world, the seeds into the soil outside, along with other plants, and insects and animals out there, you protect them, you pre-set it so they can have the best possible chance to completely plant in here. So, the greenhouse idea with child rearing is what are we intentionally doing to give them the best chance of really flourishing and blooming.
Is this a turn and talk?
It is a turning talk. Yeah, turn to your neighbor.
So I wanted to say that
Oh, never mind. I was like, okay,
yes.
Any thoughts or ideas? Sorry to interrupt. Anything you guys want to share? Any conversations going on? Not so much.
Go ahead.
I wanted to say that one of the things that I was sharing with my partner is that if any of you are green thumbs and you like to garden, one of the things that you do when a plant is done getting its start in the greenhouse and you want to transfer it out into the actual garden, there's a process called hardening off. And it's where you take plants out of a greenhouse and you put them into normal conditions for only a few hours a day so that they can get used to being in an uncontrolled environment. They get used to the cold, they get used to the breeze, and every day when you're transitioning them, you put them out for a few more hours in the day until finally they can overnight. And you do that after the period of frost, after there's no more fear of overnight frost. I sort of feel like as we help transition our children into the world, right, we make sure that they're able to go out, have their experience, and come back and touch base with their parents, have those conversations, come back into the greenhouse so that they can have that shelter again. And little by little, as they grow into adulthood, we harden them up.
I love that.
That's good.
SubhanAllah. I mean, it really does, put the example of, what is it, like tapering off, or kind of like, I don't want to use the word assimilating, but kind of like gradual release, right? Like you're gradually releasing them, they're coming back, you're talking and sharing, you're working through what's going on with them, and you're providing that modeling as well. So parenting in that sense really does begin before birth, right? When we're choosing our spouse, when we're choosing our careers even, when we're thinking ahead towards the type of future we want, what we envision for our children as adults one day, inshallah, serving their purpose that Allah created them for. And to do that, we are their spiritual model. The way that we interact with others, the way that we worship Allah, the way that we talk to them about fulfilling our purpose, it becomes their inner voice. And so when we make dua and, pray for their success, we're also manifesting that through our own actions and how we are setting that example for them. So today, inshallah, we'll talk about the ages and stages of development. And so there's 3 major domains: physical, psychosocial, and cognitive. So we'll touch upon these 3 domains and how they relate to Islamic parenting. The first one is physical development, and I'm not going to read through this. I'll leave this for you guys also to look through. But starting with birth, there are normal and typical stages that children go through that first year, moving on into toddlerhood and up until 4 or 5 years old. When we look at the physical stages of development, our job as parents is to provide for them lots of different ways for them to move their bodies and engage with them, and from everything from giving them tummy time when they're 4 months old to taking them to different playgrounds and different jumping places or whatever. I think we're all very well versed in play, right? Play in its truest form. If there are any deviations or any developmental delays, of course that's something that you work on, with their physician. But as far as physical development, I think this is not the area that we really worry about the most. Psychosocial development is where we think about the children in relation to their world. So who are their adults that they interact with, their caregivers, who are their friends, what type of play groups do they attend, And there are lots and lots of psychoanalysts who have their own theories, right? Like, you can call out a few of them. There's B.F. Skinner, there's Adler, there's so many psychoanalysts, but interestingly, that was only in the last, 100 years that a lot of these psychosocial theories came up, because before that, people just looked at kids as mini adults. Like, they're just kind of progressing until they become who they're meant to be. But actually, when we took a look at the stages that they go through, starting from infancy, each and every stage relates to a particular trait or something when they're adults. And so, for example, when we look at behavior theory, right? Behavior theory is the idea that you can provide a stimulus and a positive or negative reinforcement. And oftentimes, people resort to using behavior theory to discipline their kids because it's easy. So your child is doing something that they shouldn't be doing, some misbehavior. Providing a consequence for that misbehavior and doing that enough times will yield you the results. And for the most part, teachers do this too. Speaking as a teacher myself, it's quick, it's easy, you can just kind of train them into doing what you want them to do. But that is not the goal for us here. For us, as Muslim parents, we're working towards providing an atmosphere and engaging them in implementing intrinsic motivation, long-term intrinsic motivation, right? And they do that through watching us, as I mentioned. They do that through social learning. They do that through play, and of course, attachment. And we'll talk a lot about attachment today.
Do you want me to talk to them?
I just wanted to say, as far as, when she was saying that they watch us so much. And when children come into my classroom, 3, 4, 5 years old, I knew what was happening at home just how they were interacting with each other, myself and each other, and just their own selves by themselves, and so they do watch us even when we don't think they're watching us or hearing us or understanding. They understand, especially mommy. Everything is on mommy. Her demeanor, her tone. I've had children say, "Oh, teacher, are you mad at me because my tone was slightly louder?" So they do watch us, and so that attachment to what's happening with their parents, mommy and daddy, and their siblings and their grandparents and whoever the trusted adults around them matters a lot. Mommy's busy on her phone or with talking to someone else, and they get pushed away. That imprints on them. And my biggest fear, and I always make dua, that I did not imprint something devastating on a child because I was not in that moment present with them and what I was saying or doing in my adult worlds and facial expressions, and I'm this tall person above them. And I was constantly trying to stay on their level so that I didn't imprint something that was negative, unknown to me, of course. And that terrified me every single day when I was in the classroom. But I felt like Allah really kept giving me what I needed for them. So they knew that I loved them, I was their friend, and I was there for them, and I was going to allow them to try, fail, and keep trying and be proud of whatever they were doing and trying. So that attachment to us as the adults that they are depending on, it's very important as well as terrifying.
And so what attachment theory is the bonding between parent and child and other caregivers. And when that theory is solid and positive and they have a good bond with their parent, it relates to how they attach with others, their future relationships as adults. And so if you look at this chart right here, you can see how having a secure attachment stems from having a positive model of yourself too. And when you have a positive model or a positive outlook on yourself and you have good, healthy self-esteem, you have a secure attachment as a child, that literally relates to how you view your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when inevitably we make mistakes and we mess up, are we really hard on ourselves? Do we kind of like give up on ourselves? What does that self-talk look like? It comes from attachment theory. And so that's why we stress on it so much in the early years, because when it's solid, when it's positive, and when it's good, then inshallah, as they grow and as they develop that attachment, spiritual connection with Allah, that will be good too, inshallah. One of the points of attachment theory also is empathy, having empathy for your child. It's really hard sometimes. I alhamdulillah, 3 kids too who all went through toddler age. It's hard to empathize with them when they're crying over the red spoon versus the yellow spoon, right? But meeting them in that moment, like Sayyida said, you really wanted the red spoon, but it was in the dishwasher, so we're going to use the yellow one. But you can pick what cereal you're going to eat. Why don't you go and get the cereal and pour it yourself? Show me how you can do that. Right? In that moment, you're bonding with them, you're empathizing with them, and then you're also trying to redirect them so that they're not focused on the red spoon, because they're just going to keep crying about the red spoon, right? So this is a prophetic trait. Our Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he displayed empathy in so many ways. Specifically, one time there was a young sahabi named Abu Umair, who had a pet bird, and I'm sure you've heard this story. And the Rasul says that he used to ask about his bird and talk to the child, and then one day the bird passed away, and the Prophet saw he was upset. He didn't say to him, boys, don't cry. He didn't say to him, it's okay, we'll get you another bird, right? None of that. He was with him in the moment. He let him grieve that bird, and he felt what he was feeling. That is what empathy is, and that's our best example. And so acknowledge it, redirect them, and try to build that attachment through these examples. The next part as part of psychosocial development is Erikson's theory. So in birth to age 4, there's 2 major things that are going on. There's trust versus mistrust, which happens in infancy. An infant is crying, it's hungry, it needs a diaper change. Responding to that cry and those needs is so majorly important to do in that moment, because they're building trust with you. The next time they cry, they're going to know, like mama or baba or whoever the caregiver is at the time is going to respond to my needs, and they're building that trust slowly, right? Sometimes we hear babies are crying, just plop them in the corner or let them cry it out, or not to say crying it out is not always, sometimes they need to kind of like be on their own, but in infancy, it's really important to develop that trust because the alternate is mistrust. And as they grow up, that can alter psychosocial development too. The next important stage, according to Erikson's psychosocial stages, is autonomy versus shame and doubt. And this is another really big one because a lot of times little kids, they want to do things themselves. They want to try it on their own. They want to pour the water on their own. They want to go and they want to, go in the kitchen with mama and do what she's doing. And it's easy to just be like, no, let's go do this instead. Or no, let's go, in the corner and busy them with something else or have someone come and take them, right? But that is such a good teachable moment to have them be with you in that moment and give them tools for success. Tools that are, maybe it's a small child-sized hand or water pitcher and they're pouring it into a bowl. Maybe you cut a sponge in half and you're cleaning and they're cleaning and they're doing their thing. And of course they're wiping the walls and making a mess, but they're doing it, right? That's building their confidence and that's building their autonomy. So setting our kids up for success when they're young is really important to do by setting up the right environment for them. Giving them that agency and also to model for them how to get started on an activity and then get them started in their play and then walk away. Let them play with whatever they're doing. You're showing them and you're nearby and they know they can come to you, but then you walk away. And that's when you can tend to other things. You can finish whatever job you were doing on, online or on the computer, or if you're in the kitchen or whatever you're doing. And obviously if there's multiple kids in the house, what you're tending to also play and walk away is another great strategy to build the autonomy in this age.
I just wanted to add something to that. And that doesn't mean they're going to play in their playing space all neat and tidy. It's probably going to be a mess. So when she's saying set them up for success, you're not going to set them up in a space or with tools that's going to be a mess. I mean, if there's water spill, water evaporates. It's not such a big deal, and they can dry that up with you with the cloths and rats and things like that. So I just, sometimes people see these pictures and everyone's sitting, crisscross applesauce with their hands and they're just coloring in the lines, and kids don't do that. They're all over the place, and that's good, And so nothing's bad in that because they're in a safe environment. They have safe tools to use. So whatever they do, even they take the bowl of water and dump it on their head, it's like, oops, now we're all wet. What are we going to do now? That's okay too, and that's teachable, and that's a great experience, and they feel like they got, you trusted them to try, and they can try, and it's not like, oh, I poured the water, I did it wrong, and now I'm in trouble. So you're walking away, and you're coming back to a mess. That's a good, another teachable, fun thing to do with mommy and daddy, of course.
Yeah. And then as they grow older into age 3, age 4, maybe they're going to daycare or starting preschool or something, they're moving into initiative versus guilt. And so taking the initiative, again, fostering that independence and that autonomy to do things on their own. So when they want to choose their own clothes, give them options. Maybe at the beginning of the week when you do the laundry, you're setting up the shirts that they can choose from, the pants that they can choose from throughout the week, and then they can go and get themselves dressed based off of the choices you already gave them, right? Rather than setting them up to go ahead and pick your clothes, and then if someone's wearing Spider-Man pants and a Batman, that's what my boys do. So, alhamdulillah, that is of course expressing creativity, but if you want to set them up for success, you have to set that up physically and put the time in beforehand before they go and explore the world on their own. The next stage the next domain is cognitive. And so cognitive stages for babies is really just the sensory motor stage, which is exploring the world through senses. And so we see infant toys and baby toys with lots of high contrast images, play gyms with different textures, and we see that sometimes we're like, oh, babies like those things. It's not just that they like them, they literally need those to build their brain, to build their cognitive abilities. And so giving them as much access to different senses is really vital in implementing this. Also, having a response and a reaction, playing games like peekaboo, is teaching object permanence. So there's different specific things that they're supposed to learn in this stage. So when you play peekaboo, what you're doing is you're hiding your face, right? And the baby literally thinks you're gone. He's like, whoa, whoa. So then when you pop back in, they're super excited because they're like, oh, you were there all along. That's their brain synapses are connecting and firing up like crazy because they're actually learning. It's not just a silly game that we like to play, right? You'll see toys that have like a ball inside of a box. You drop the ball in and then the ball rolls out. They're like, where did it come from, right? That's all learning and that's all part of cognitive development. Stacking, blocks, any type of like creativity, hands-on art tools, sensory bins, all these things we see at Target and all these things we see on Pinterest, and they're great to look at and they're really aesthetic, but there's a lot of meaningful learning going on with these types of activities. And so our job as parents, again, is to provide those experiences for them. Play is learning in this age. Birth forward is play. Play with your kids. The Prophet was, of course, so right in this. Play is so vital for everything. It's vital for bonding, attachment, for learning, for psychosocial interaction. It's everything. Also, having when you speak to your child at this age, right? Like you hear people speaking like highs and lows, and it's called parentese. It's a real thing. You might have seen Miss Rachel on YouTube or other people on YouTube who talk to kids in really high voices, and it sounds silly, but it naturally comes out because that is them learning language, and that is them understanding inflections has meaning, and their language development is blossoming and all sorts of things. And so when you play with them, you use high and lows, you use puppets, you tell stories. So all of that is all great stuff, very meaningful. I wanted to mention, so one of my roles here at Adams, alhamdulillah, is I'm also on the Children's Committee. And actually, Yasmin just walked in too. She's also on the Children's Committee, along with Maryam and then Sister Misbah and Sister Sosan. So we like to provide activities for kids at the masjid, and one of those things is Ummi and Me. Ummi and Me, shameless plug, we have 3 locations that we do Ummi and Me weekly, and it's a play group for moms and their babies, or moms and their toddlers, and all of these things that I just mentioned right now, we do them in a group. And so we have songs and puppets and crafts, and I'll just play this video really quick, hopefully it works. Yeah, so we implement different Islamic themed books and stories, and we give kids access to different activities, and all of this is happening while they're bonding with their caregiver. And it's not so much for, I know sometimes we want to put our kids in playgroups to like make friends and play with others, and that's a great goal, but if that's not happening, that's okay. A lot of times kids just show up and they play and they do their own thing, and they're not even playing with the rest of the kids, and that's okay. The point of it is to just give them that experience and to encourage that play and bonding that's happening.
I want to say that that's the age for parallel play too, right? So they might not be interactive. Developmentally, there's a lot of parallel play happening at this developmental stage where they play next to each other but not exactly with each other.
I still watching my friend, even though they're not playing.
Yeah. So we do have these 3 locations. We're done for the year. Inshallah, we'll start again in January, but if any of you or your friends have babies, toddlers in this age group, or you're expecting even, like, you're welcome to show up and play with us and have fun. So the next stage is the pre-operational stage. So this stage starts around 2, and this is the main element of this is language development. Talking all day long. You know, any of you guys with toddlers can attest to this. Lots of questions, lots of why, lots of this. And I think the most important thing to foster here, as far as cognitive development, is having routines, predictability, exposing them to many new experiences, right? Lots of materials for creativity, outings, taking them to see the animals at the zoo. It's not just a fun trip. It's like, do they like animals? Well, maybe they fix up on zebras. Hey, my kid came back talking about zebras. Let's go online and find movies of zebras and watch videos of zebras and learn everything there is to know about zebras, right? Those are the learning moments. Those are the opportunities. And so giving them exposure to many experiences are the building blocks to learn here. There's also pretend play. So a lot of costumes, fire department stuff, firefighter stuff, doctor play kits. Like, there's so many things out there, right? Pretend play is huge for this age too, and just talking to them.
I just wanted to say about pretend play, because that's definitely my domain. They do come to the classroom to play because they are going to learn, because learning is everywhere, math is everywhere, science is everywhere, And pretend play is imagination, is what they see out in their environment. So a girl wanting to be a firefighter or a cowboy, it's fine. A girl wanting to be a princess, it's fine. They see those movies, they see what mommy's wearing heels, and they just want to pretend play. It has nothing to do with gender. And a lot of times, you know, they're gonna get hit with that anyway, of course, with our gender roles, and we have them, of course. But at the younger age, it's just pretending. It's just trying to be like mommy, like daddy. You know, the girls want to wear the fake beards and the hats and the ties. And so there's no labels there, you know, and sometimes we get caught up in getting really weary about that sort of thing, but it is what it's called, pretend play, and it is huge because they're trying different things out and just for fun, that's all.
In the pre-operational stage, there's a lot of child-led investigation that's happening too. So I'll paint a picture for you. So you're going on a walk with your 2-year-old, 2.5-year-old, and they're asking you like, oh mama, or baba, the leaves are turning red. Like, what's that all about? And you can simply say like, oh yeah, it's fall. That happens in the fall, it's fall time, right? But that's a missed opportunity because you could go real deep into that. You could say, this happens because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the trees to take care of themselves. And so what they do in the fall is they lose their chlorophyll. They stop making food for those leaves, and the chlorophyll, which makes the leaf green, it turns the leaf red, which is its original color. Like you could do a whole thing, right? And it seems like a lot, but it's really not. They're sponges. They're soaking up everything, and they will remember everything you tell them too. And so if you focus that moment on explaining the reason, taking your time with them, and then telling them like, you know, Allah is al-Khaliq, He's the one who made the trees. What do we do in the winter to take care of ourselves when it's cold? Look, Allah knows what we need, and He gives us what we need. He's amazing. He created us. Of course He knows what we need, right? That's like a whole thing you just did, and it's a great. There's so many examples throughout the day where I feel like, even for me personally, there's missed opportunities, right, when they ask these questions. But if we really hone in, give the time and patience it takes to really talk to them, not only is it cognitive explosion, it's bonding, it's learning about Allah and who He is, and there's a lot of positive outcomes that stem from that. I also want to mention here that having a counseling background, while a lot of therapists might not work with children this young, what does happen is through children's play, we learn a lot about their psyche and how their worldview, right? So like if children are going through something, which can happen, sometimes they go through traumatic things, and then a therapist might have to, you know, kind of work with that child and see like how best can I help them, how best can I help this child come up with coping skills at such an early age, using dolls and puppets and stories, drawing pictures of what's going on, just playing with them, right? There's so much that you can get out of watching them play and engaging in their play. That's what you would essentially do as a therapist, is you would kind of like have them show you before you sit there and talk and like tell me how you feel, and they might not even be able to name their feelings quite yet, but they can tell you how they feel with regards to what's going on in their mind and their world. And so cognitive restructuring, self-talk, all of that, therapists can definitely work with kids as young as this age.
I just wanted to piggyback on what you said before about missed opportunities. Okay, so it's lots of them, right? So we don't want to overwhelm them either. And so children, they ask a lot of questions. So if they're saying, I just want a simple answer, then just give them a simple answer. They let you know what they're wanting. A lot of times we think, how could they know what they want? But they tell us all the time, you know, I don't want this. And you can dive into, well, why do you think that is, you know? But don't overwhelm at the same time. So it's such a delicate balance, of course. But listening to the child, ask questions and answering the questions they're asking, and also acknowledging what they're telling you, like, yeah, that's a lot. That's too much for me, because it's appropriate to their stage, right? I just wanted to say that it's okay to give a simple answer when a child wants a simple answer.
Yes, definitely. We don't always have the ability and time in the moment to answer everything, but inshallah we can all be more intentional when we do. So going back to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he said to play with them for the first 7 years of their life, and then teach them for the next 7 years, and then advise them for the next 7 years and after that. What does that mean and look like? We talked about different domains and development that goes on, different best practices in parenting that we can implement and tools that we can try on a daily basis, right? We talked about creating a vision and a long-term goal for what our, inshallah, adult child will be when they're older. But this is the time to really roll up our sleeves, as young as they are, and get to work by educating ourselves, by being self-aware about our own parenting, where it stems from, maybe our own setbacks that we have within ourselves, and to work towards bettering ourselves to show up for our kids. Because at the end of the day, these kids are a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we really have to think of it as an amana. They don't belong to us, they belong to Allah. So we need to be doing our best, and of course this goes to me first, doing our best to be as self-aware as we can and work on our own everything internal to show up for our kids, inshallah. So these are the formation years when the child is constantly influenced by their surroundings, and then they learn by observing, and they're building the attachment. If we see undesired behaviors or things that we're noticing at this age, more than likely they're observing those behaviors in us, right? Or some other caregiver. And so kids are good and innately pure. The way Allah created them, they're perfect. Any type of behavior is either a misalignment with an unmet need, right? Or something that they're seeing their adult do or say. And so it's a good way for us to like kind of take a step back and be like, oh wait, why is my daughter saying or doing this? Why is my son, displaying this type of behavior? It's a way to look at ourselves. They're mirroring us. And to also understand that they imitate everything they see, even what they watch, even what they hear, even what their friends are saying when they're 2 years old, when they're 1.5, 2, 3 years old. It doesn't happen when they're 7, 8, 9. It happens now when they're young. I see a lot of people nodding. So yes, I'm sure everyone
is not receiving. I was just going to say that. Yeah, even when sometimes it's what are they lacking? What's not happening for them? That'll come out as well.
Yeah.
Not just what they're seeing and hearing. What they're not hearing, what they're not seeing, what they're not feeling, what they're not trusting will come out as well at this very young age. And they're not a way that they can have a conversation with you about it. Like, what did you do in school today? I played. They're not adults, because they're not going to have those, intricate conversations, and because that's their space and they played, and that's all they're going to tell you.
Exactly, and that's, how many times have we seen children displaying attention-seeking behaviors, right? What is attention-seeking behavior? They're seeking attention because there's some attachment or there's some need that's unfulfilled. And so if they're doing things to get your attention, give them their attention, right? Like I think a lot of times we don't want to feed into the bad habit. We don't want to respond to it. We're like, just ignore them. That's the complete opposite of what is supposed to happen, because I'm not saying to respond to if they're having a tantrum, for example. We're not gonna maybe meet them right there in the moment and let them tantrum it out, but instead get down on their level. Talk to them eye to eye, soften your voice. It sounds like you're really upset. It looks like you're missing Baba right now. It looks like you're, feeling like you didn't get a chance to play the way you wanted to play with your brother, right? Changing your tone. All of that empathy, all of that bonding, all of that, that could be what they're missing when they're seeking attention and trying to display those behaviors.
I want to also say that, when going back to the greenhouse analogy, sometimes it's not an interaction necessarily that they're missing, but it's that you haven't set up their daily routine, their space, the pace of life to their needs. Something in, if you see all of the plants in the greenhouse wilting, then there's something wrong in the environment, the general environment, that isn't meeting the needs of your plants. It's the same thing with your children. What does your day look like? If you say clean up, but there isn't a place for everything, then they can't clean up, right? So you've got to make sure that when Sayyida says set them up for success, it means in all of those different ways. It's not just the environment, it's also the routine, right? So, and when things aren't organized, they're not predictable, they don't meet them where they are, then that can create behaviors that aren't necessarily attention seeking, but what we would consider acting out, right? So why are they acting out? We get frustrated when life isn't predictable, or when the daily routine is, you know, antithetical to our rhythms. Children are the same way. I'm sorry.
To add to that, also, I would say making sure that their day is structured with a variety of play. So some kids, they need more sensory input than others. Some kids need more alone time and just decompression in their room playing with Legos quietly and my brother is not bothering me, right? Some kids, they need different things and it's up to us to figure out like what is it that they specifically, not all kids, that specific child of mine is missing in their day and how can I best provide that for them. So I'll give an example. My son, I have one in particular who has really high sensory needs. And so he needs a lot of cuddling and touching time with mama. He needs that time to sit with me after school before he does homework, before he does anything else, before he runs off to jujitsu. He needs to like snuggle with me or his dad and just like leave him alone. Like don't talk to him about his day, don't talk to him about, don't tell him to go grab a book and do 20 minutes reading, like just sit and just get that sensory input. And that can be, once you start Googling the sensory diet or sensory input, you'll get so many examples of things you can do. And different kids need different things, textures, sounds, smells. Sometimes it's overstimulating, sometimes it's understimulating. Sometimes your home is not set up in a way where they can play and run around freely, right? So we really need to look at their day and their entire environment again.
Some kids, most kids need to be outdoors.
Oh, yeah.
That is where we live.
We're going there.
We live outdoors. We're part of nature. Allah has everything that we need, and the ability, the mental ability to build houses and huts to protect us from the nature. But that's where we are supposed to be. And so any opportunity, when it's cold, bundle up, outdoor, so much exploration, tons and tons. And they need that, all of that, the sun and fresh air. Please, you want to say something? Oh.
It was a question I had. I'd love your insight on. So often when you are a parent of many young children, you're kind of in survival mode a lot of times. So I just wanted to hear some maybe like concrete examples of like in a greenhouse with young kids.
Yeah.
What are some concrete examples of like adding structure, adding some scheduling? What can we do?
I'm gonna
the
get to
chaos that
scheduling.
happens?
Absolutely.
We're gonna get to that.
Okay.
The routines and the scheduling, definitely.
Okay.
Yep.
Absolutely. My oldest brother has 11, so he did it military style.
I want to see that. Yeah, since we're on the topic of getting outside, let's go there for a moment. So when we say go outside, right? Everyone tells kids to go outside. Just send them outside, just go play basketball in the street, just, go to your neighbor's house. No, like those are good things too, right? But when we go outside, when we go on a nature walk, when you get yourself a scavenger hunt and you say, let's find 3 leaves that look like, this. Let's find 1 long leaf. Let's find a rock. My son loves rocks. I'm sure you guys have kids that love rocks too. What we're doing is we're giving them sensory input, being outside, getting that fresh air, getting their feet in the grass, practicing grounding, right? Take your shoes off and walk in the grass. That's what Sayyida loves to do. We're talking about Islamic values, noticing the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how everything is in a balance, right? The leaf analogy we talked about earlier, the animals. Actually, winter time is a great time to go outside because the animals are getting ready for the winter, right? What are they doing to prepare themselves? What does the bear do? You're not going to see a bear, hopefully, but we can talk about it. What do the squirrels do? Why are all these acorns on the ground? What do you think is happening? What do you think they're going to do with all these acorns, right? So that's that sensory input, the Islamic values, language building as we talk and as we explore the different things. And of course you can use patterns and colors and math and counting and numbers and sequencing. There's so much that happens when we take our kids outside. So we truly don't want to minimize how much of a positive impact it has the more they go out. And if cold deters you, Land's End has really good snow bibs and really good thermals, and there's nothing wrong with bundling up. I put my son in a nature class at Compass a few years ago, and she took him out. There was ice on the ground, and they would go on nature walks together every week. Actually, her name is Miss Denham. She's amazing. If you guys want her information, I'll definitely pass it on to you. She's a fantastic teacher. And she did all of that. She showed them autumn berries. She let them taste things, of course, because she knows what's safe to taste. There's a lot of great things out there, especially living in Virginia, alhamdulillah. And of course, all of it is attachment. It's all bonding. That's what we're That's our goal in the long term, right? So we're gonna pause for a moment here and do a quick activity. If you'll just give me a minute, you can take a break if you need to.
Okay.
So do you want to tell them what you're doing?
Do you want to tell them what you're doing? Well, I.
Yeah.
So Strada Kotha is gonna have everyone a white chocolate, a milk chocolate.
Another wonderful thing Allah has blessed us with, chocolate.
Yeah, oh, that's very serious.
Checking what the calorie seed looks like, right?
Yeah.
Alright, Smina. So when you get your chocolates, you're welcome to try whichever one you want first, but I ask that you fully immerse yourself in the tasting experience. So you're gonna close your eyes. You can unwrap your chocolate with your eyes open, and then close your eyes.
So you know which one.
So you know which one you're having.
Usually the dark chocolate is darker than milk chocolate.
Take a moment to inhale the scent of that chocolate. And when you taste it, let it fully dissolve. Relax your body while you do this. Relax your shoulders. Sometimes we hold a lot of tension in our shoulders. And just breathe. And depending on which one you chose first, you might be experiencing a bitter taste, or sweet, creamy. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't really like it, maybe it's less palatable. And take a moment to form your own opinion and just enjoy your chocolate. Ooh, yes, that's a good point. Maybe the initial flavor changes. So it starts off tasting sweeter, changes to bitter, different levels. And when you're ready to sample your next flavor, you're welcome to open your eyes and unwrap the next one. I hope you can find moments in your day to do this for yourself too, because as parents, we're running around all the time from morning until night, and just whether it's a cup of coffee or just your own water that no one else wants to drink out of, or your own lunch, really value that time for yourself and be mindful and appreciate the gift of food that Allah has also blessed us with whatever it is. Yeah, 5 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day. Take that time for yourself. I'll tell you, I do this with kids a lot, and they love it. And you like the sounds they make and the words and the excitement, and then watching them with their eyes closed when they're really into their chocolate. It's so cool. Kids love mindfulness. So I'll let you.
Can I ask how old before you could start like mindfulness exercises?
Oh, little like toddlers. Toddlers won't really stay quiet long enough to do it, but you can do small things. All mindfulness really is teaching someone to be present in the moment and really just immerse themselves in what's going on, right? So actually, kids are a lot more mindful than we are. When they're sitting there building their blocks, they are super mindful of how evenly they're stacking it, is it toppling over. And that's, subhanAllah, this is something I had to unlearn myself, was not to interrupt them when they're playing and not to, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I wanted to ask this question.
that when they are completely into what they are doing something, and then when I come in and ask, do you want something, or it's dinner time, or it's lunch time, my son does not listen. So he's completely, it looks like he's completely blocked off himself from the surrounding noise.
Because he has.
Everything. So I feel like he's not into listening anything. But it's happened sometimes that he only listens to the things that he wants to listen. So if I say, get some chocolate, he will listen to that.
Buzzword.
But not something that he really does not.
Yes, of
Is
course.
that a good thing, or like?
It's a natural thing. Good, bad, what is good, bad, right? It's a natural, it's a very normal thing.
But we want to let them play when they are.
Well, if there's something pressing, you need to get your shoes on now, I would give like 5 minutes, 2 minutes, okay, and 2 more, you have 2 more minutes to finish up your last thing, and then we're gonna put on our shoes and go, giving those like gradual kind of warnings, so it's not just like, okay, we gotta get out of the house, let's go get shoes on, which sometimes I do that too. But
And allow them to save it for later.
yeah.
Don't
Ooh,
undo
yeah.
his blocks,
Yeah.
you know?
Let him leave it there to come back to it when we're back home. But yes, I think kids are, when they are very focused in the moment, we want to foster that, because as adults, sometimes we, and even like adolescents, younger children, we become more distracted, and then we start to lose our focus, and then we think back to like, wait, but you used to have such good focus on this, like what's different now? And of course, activities change, and sometimes they're just not fully engaged or interested in what they're doing. But a lot of it is because, maybe we had a part to play in bringing their concentration when they were supposed to, when they were really honing in on something, we're the ones who stepped in and took them away from it, right? But like I said, we can't always do that. It just depends on what the task is, what they're doing, how pressing it is, and how many warnings we gave them. So this chocolate activity wasn't only mindfulness. I also want you to think about how the different types of chocolate gave you a different sensation. Maybe there were traits of the flavors that you liked or didn't like. Maybe there was a misalignment with, some type of preference you have. Maybe you're not a white chocolate person, but you tried it and you're like, yeah, definitely not a white chocolate person, right? Whatever it is, we can relate this back to children and their temperaments. And Sayyida Kauthar talked a lot about temperament last time, and so I won't go too much into that. But children come to us already who they are. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them who they are. They are not blank slates, contrary to what previous psychoanalysts might have thought in the 50s or beyond. They are very much their own person, with their own likes, dislikes, personalities, their gifts, their talents. And so for us to focus in on how we can best bring out those talents and set them up for success, there it is again, by giving them opportunities to utilize those talents and utilize their creativity, their skills, whatever it is. And then sometimes our own temperament might not match the temperament of our child, right? What does that mean? What does that look like? Sometimes you have a child, maybe you don't really get along, maybe you bump heads with them a lot. And that's okay, that's normal, right? We're all our own person, but that doesn't mean that that's it, you're done. There's no bonding and really, no, of course not. You zero in on what it is that is misaligned. What is it within ourselves, because we're the adults, right? What am I doing? Why is that triggering to me? Does that remind me of someone else? Does that remind me of something else that may have happened to me? And working through that on our own and internalizing like it's a me problem, right? And then also understanding how best to re-engage with the child based on their love language. And I think Sayyida Kauthar is going to go into love languages and other things down the line when we talk about mental health in children. But understanding the love language of your child is so vital in these early years, because they definitely have one. Really quick, acts of service, giving gifts. Remind me, I should know this. Acts of service, words of affirmation,
physical
physical touch,
It's 5, right?
quality time,
quality time,
gift giving.
and gift giving, yes. And so when you have a child who collects little trinkets and likes to keep things in their little boxes, maybe they're really into things, right? That's okay. And maybe when you gift them something they really love it, hold on to it, they walk around the house with it, they take it everywhere they go, that's a love language to them. So just finding what it is that speaks to them, and also trying to work to balance out our temperament with their temperament, and also be on this journey of attachment. is the goal.
At what age do you implement love language?
Or
When do you
Yeah.
figure it out?
when do you
Exactly.
figure it out is now. I would
Yeah,
say.
you're observing the children.
2 years?
You're
Yeah.
observing.
You'll start to see it.
They come out of the womb, alhamdulillah, that way.
I had,
And we just have to figure that out.
right. I had one child, one of my children who always wanted to be held. I mean, she was like an appendage until she was, I don't even know, 5. But yeah,
You also wore her
she was
until she was
in your
4.
preschool, and how much did she want
Yes.
cuddles?
And she
All the
she
time.
forced herself into my body. Yes.
Right, yeah. And then I had one that was like, please don't touch me. I need to lay down in my crib by myself with nothing and like just leave me alone. And she's still pretty much like that. She still doesn't want me. You know, she's like, okay, you have to hug mom, you know. She's 20, right? So you have, you know, you start to see this at a young age. And when it comes to like butting heads with your children and what they want, I had 2 that are like little clutter bugs. And they love to collect things, as they had pointed out. But I am like super OCD, neat and tidy, and everything has a place. And so you can imagine when things were starting to pour out, you know. Yeah, can you imagine? I think you can imagine, right? Oh, over there, the balloons. So, you know, and I think that you start to feel that out, and you're like, oh my, you know, let me help, let's find a happy medium. You can have your things, but they need to be able to fit into this organizer in the closet. Yeah, over there, the balloons. You see that? You want to go over there? So badly. So badly. I'm going to take you around. So, you know, it's just about finding where that, you know, where that happy space is. You can have all your stuff, but it's got to be able to fit into your closet, so I can close the doors and not see it, right? And just giving them the tools for success, just like that. And we're going to go see balloons and you guys can talk.
And you had another question?
Yeah, so earlier you mentioned like, okay, take them to the zoo, they like an animal and watch videos. What if you're trying to take an approach of not giving them screen time for as long as possible?
We're going to talk about
So,
balloons.
yeah, so can you give us some input on the screen time, touch on that?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're gonna get to screen time. I have young kids too. I get this generation. It's not as simple as like just don't give them a screen. You can't. I get it. Maybe in previous years or previous generations you could control it more, but now it's just so accessible, and a lot of times like, you know, there are things that bring a lot of benefit to learning and development, right? And so we kind of have to, I mean, we'll get into it, inshallah, the specifics of it, and how to determine like how much to give, when, what times of the day, what types of media are we exposing them to, and all of that, inshallah. But just to close up this section, so going back to the hadith of the first 7, next 7, and final 7. So this birth to age 4 foundational time of their life, it's the base from which the relationship with them grows. If this base is rock solid, inshallah the remaining years will be much easier, inshallah. If the foundation forms poorly, the next years could be more challenging. We might see that if that trust versus mistrust didn't happen when they were babies, oh well now maybe they have more stranger danger, they don't really want to go to school and be left alone because they don't trust them. They're adults coming back. I'm not trying to paint a scary picture for you, I'm just saying that there is truth to these stages and these developmental patterns. And so when we look at each growth, we can almost always pinpoint things back to early childhood. It's a really important time. It's not just all, you know, play and reading books, and I mean those things are meaningful things. Why are we playing and reading books? Why are we building attachment? And lastly, just that piece on self-awareness, right? I know you also mentioned like how do we build the routine in the day? How do we, you know, if we have multiple kids, like for us to, I mean, these are great questions because we have to realize our own shortcomings and our own responsibilities, and that we may not always be, maybe we're working, maybe we're not the ones who are with them throughout the day, maybe we have other responsibilities or people in the home to attend to. You know, sometimes we as parents who are going through illnesses, our own mental health issues, and we'll talk about that towards the end too. But just to be self-aware and constantly be in a mode of like working on ourselves and bettering ourselves and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make the journey easier for us, and parent with ihsan. I say this a lot, parent with ihsan. What is parent with ihsan? to parents as if Allah, from the hadith, right? Parent as if Allah, or as if you can see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because He can see you, right? If I'm with my kid and we're getting into it and I feel like Allah's right there watching me, watching my words, I'm less likely to say or do something that I know I will be held accountable for because this child is an amana. This child belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that self-awareness and then parenting with ihsan and being aware of like what I'm saying and doing with my children, and it's gonna come back to me. For me personally, I feel like that helps me during my parenting journey.
Well, I just wanted to add just the foundation here she's talking about. There's so many conveniences out there for us, and so it's really a matter, I feel like it's a matter of you pay now with your time and your intentions, because we are going to be held accountable in the next life, and in this life. Okay, so I'll just wrap it up very quick, so you either pay with your time now and your intentions now, or you pay later the cost of taking those conveniences now, quick shortcuts now, not being present with your children now. There's going to be a cost to pay later. You're going to pay now, you're going to pay later, and everyone loses later. So it's more time now, it's more energy now. It's so worth it to give that time and to inshallah seek and get that reward, that benefit later when you're older. And of course, Allah will be pleased with us.
So we'll pause here for a little break, and we'll meet you back here inshallah after salah.
It did, by the way. Alhamdulillah, Allah Kareem. Alhamdulillah. Alright, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina wa Habibina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa sallam tasliman kathira. Welcome back to After the Break, where I hope you enjoyed the first session. I hope it was illuminating for you and inspiring, and I'm excited for us to be back for the second session. So what do we have?
So we're going to head right into it. We're going to be talking about the foundation of Islamic parenting. Let's go here. And so what that looks like in terms of creating a loving environment with adult caregivers, the importance of having Quranic recitation and dhikr and other stories related to the Quran, and just immersing them in the Islamic traditions and values, and also teaching basic Islamic values through daily routines. So that's when we're going to touch on the whole routines and setting up systems in your home. As far as creating a loving environment, we talked a lot about attachment theory, right? One thing I wanted to really point out, and I don't know where I heard this, but from the mother, we typically receive nurturing, love, affection. We learn how to love, we learn how to show care and compassion, typically, right? From the father, we learn confidence, we learn self-esteem, and so of course, there's always going to be, differences in personalities. But if we take that responsibility upon ourselves as a parent, I'm either contributing to their long-term confidence, or I'm contributing to them learning how to nurture and love themselves and others. Then everything we do becomes very intentional. So roughhousing with them, for example, right? Like whether it's the mom or the dad, it's really important for them to learn how to wrestle and fight on the floor and grapple each other, right? It's even rooted within our sunnah. Similarly,
Boy mom, by the way.
Boy mom, straight boy mom. I'm wrestling every day after Maghrib in my house, every day. And they're in jiu-jitsu too, so it's really 5 days ago. Alhamdulillah. But part of that environment is what Sayyida was touching on earlier too, in terms of having things geared towards the child in their own home. So not necessarily like a separate playroom that's full of their toys, and then you go to the playroom and then that's your only space in the house. But when you walk into the home, what is it that you see in every space of the home that is geared towards and screams, this is my kid's home? Do they have smaller utensils and things to play with in the kitchen? that, alongside whichever parent is working in the kitchen, they can also do they have books at their level that's in the family library? Is there like a prayer rug janamas that's maybe child size? Maybe they, picked it out themselves, or if you went to Umi, we actually make prayer rugs together. Maybe they have their own things in every space of the home, including their bedroom, right? But not limited to just a playroom. So I want you actually, if you don't mind talking more about that, Sayyida, because she has, the way she had set up her classroom at Al-Fatih, mashallah, like everything was obviously child-centered, but the kids were washing dishes. 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds were washing dishes in the classroom on a daily basis. So I'd really love for you to speak to how you did that.
And when you were saying about their, in their home environment, I was thinking school, of course, but I'm thinking home. Hooks for on their level to hook up their own coat. So many children would come into the classroom and their parents would take off their coat for them and hook it. I don't like, oh, no, it's their coat. Now figure out how to unzip it. There's a hook for them. And so basically walking into the door of the classroom, what greeted them, what they saw, whether it was puzzles magnets of alphabets for when they first walk in, it greeted them and their cubbies and things like that. And I'm not saying to have a classroom set up, but think about that, where does your child, when they come in the door, where do they put their shoes, where do they put their coats, and then they come in and where do they go? Do they grab a screen? Of course, we were talking about that. Or do they go, is there a family room with tables that was at their level for them to sit down on the floor and puzzles and bins and things like that can be put away, of course, but do they go straight to their room? And in their room, what does that look like? The whole aspect of the house becomes the classroom, if you will, because it is teaching them something. And then do they get to take off their shoes and throw their coat on the ground and then go to play, or do they have to then do their routine and do their expectations of, you have to do this and now you can get to do that? Do they go straight to the kitchen to eat their snacks? Do they have to wash their hands? And how do they wash their hands? Do they have a stool to stand up to turn on the water? I mean, what's for them to do as much as they can on their own? Maybe they don't have the best hand washing, but they're attempting to do it, right? So the routines, the rules and the routines, we call it. So what are the rules and expectations in the home for the children to do for themselves before they go to the next thing? And it is very structured. It is very intentional. And so when they come into the kitchen to eat their snack, their lunch, can they take out their own little plates and pour their own water, get their own juice boxes, or whatever that is set up for? What can they do on their own to help along with what's going the next routine of the day? But they're involved in it as well. They're not sort of like, go to your room, go to the playroom, I'm gonna get it all together, and they're not involved at all. It's like they love that experience with doing that because they feel like they've accomplished something. They feel like they're big boys and girls now, and I was able to do this and that. And you have multiple children. Maybe you have a child that you have a schedule. Who gets to be in the kitchen with mommy to help set up lunch? Maybe, it's every other day or different parts of the day, one child gets to have that one-on-one experience. Not everyone can be in the kitchen doing that same thing possibly. But so you structure it in such a way. So it does become, because you are their main first teacher. So it does become like the classroom, but in the home. Yeah.
And to that point, when we set up our kids for success in that way, we're actually alleviating some of the burden and responsibility off of ourselves as a parent. So if we're walking in the door and directing them the moment we walk in, it becomes exhausting, right? Like you walk in the house and like, okay, put your lunchbox, put your backpack here, Whereas if they have their system set up, their hook on the door, their cubby with their name, or you don't have to put their name on it, but I do in my house, but that's just me. But if they have their space and they have their places to go and things built into the routine of the day, you just walk in and then they know what they're doing, inshallah. That's the goal. There's gonna be bumps along the way, and of course the learning curve takes time. It takes a lot of time to build a habit for us and for the kids, but it will definitely alleviate some of that burnout too, by giving kids the autonomy, the confidence to do those things on their own. So this again goes back to the whole concept of autonomy versus shame and doubt, right? Doubting themselves, like where do I go? Do I put this here? Do I mom's gonna say, you know, I did it wrong? Whereas just building up their self-esteem and giving them the tools to put their things where they need to go. In terms of building a loving environment, we're going to talk about using positive language for our kids. Of course, positive language, we know what it looks like, we know what it sounds like. But what I want to take a moment to think about is when we speak to our children, when we're giving them jobs, responsibilities, tasks, orders sometimes, what type of language are we using? Clear and concise and specific, right? Clear, concise, and specific. So not using a whole lot of words to explain, we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do this. Some kids respond really well to that. Some kids just need like 2-3 words. Shoes, jacket, snack, right? Being clear and concise in your language and for them to know what to expect. Similarly, when they're doing their work, you know, when they're writing their name on their paper or trying out their shapes for the first time, what type of encouragement are we giving them? Are we giving them like ambiguous, you know, if you want to go ahead and take the blue paper, you can take the blue paper. Like if you want to go ahead and have a seat at the table, we can get started on it. Just be clear and concise. Grab your paper, grab your pencil, and come sit down. We're going to work on your shapes today. And when they do their squiggles and when they do their little lines, are we uplifting them and say like, wow, can you tell me what you drew? Or if they're coming to you and saying like, Mama, look at my S, I drew an S. And instead of, you know, praising them for their letter S, instead we say like, oh, let me show you what S looks like. Or I'll give you an example. Once we had a parent and her daughter was learning to write her name, and so she was practicing writing letters in her name, and her mom kind of was like, oh, I know it's hard to read, let me just write over them. And Sayyida was kind of like, oh, no, it's okay, it's great work, whatever, you know, mashallah, you have to affirm the child and the effort that they put in. And because they're hearing that and they're internalizing that as like, oh wait, I didn't do this correctly, like forget this, I'm not gonna do this again. Or, you know, it just takes it takes a blow to their self-esteem. And so when I say positive language, clear, concise, specific, I'm truly trying to be positive, even when we think that it's not necessarily a bad thing to say like that, let me show you what S looks like, that's not really an S. It can be taken that way.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on that because they're trying to make shapes that they never tried before. They have their small muscles in their fingers and you try to write an S with your non-dominant hand, you know? And so they're trying to see the shape, hand-eye coordination, their brain is making that motion. The left side is not even something that comes into play at that point. So they're pressing down and then moving back and forth. That's a lot of work for a child at that age. It is all praise, it's always, always all good. So if for whatever reason you need to write their name on the back of it when they're not looking in the corner, that's what you do. But it's always, if they put their shoes on and take your pointer finger and pull that thing in the back and all that kind of stuff, and it's on the opposite foot, I mean, let it go with that. Are they gonna trip and fall? You could say, oh, you might, let's try it the other way, do it again and try to switch it, just so that they won't be tripping over their feet if their shoe is really curved, you know, but it's never, that's the wrong foot. You didn't do that, right? Never, I'm sorry. Okay, I got it, sorry. So never that, because they're attempting, and how do they learn to make the letter S? And how do they learn to put their shoes on if they're not attempting to do that? Just like when they were crawling and then walking, you didn't give them lessons, and no one taught them how to crawl and walk. It happened naturally over time with them trying and falling and trying and tripping. Same thing with their brain continues to learn and develop by interacting with the environment, and they don't try to take that little hook, that little loop in their coat and push it over that hook. They won't learn how to do it if we're doing it for them and telling them they did it wrong. And even if they just pushed up and somehow it caught, somehow, then let it be. And if you fix it, not when they see it. If you change it, not when they see it, because they did that themselves. So it's really important that you allow them trial and error and always praise their attempts, because that's how the muscle actually grows.
And, oh yes, go ahead, your question.
So I wanted to add something about for the phrasing. I was speaking with a behavior therapist, and she was saying with the intentionality, and this requires more work for us because we have to be more present. But like, let's say like they're writing the S, not just saying like, wow, that's a great S, but then you have to praise the behavior that you want them to have. Yes. So saying that I love how you were so patient and kept trying even though it was hard. So like little specific things, even when they're interacting with their siblings, and like let's say one sibling shoves one person and then the other one stays kind of calm, then immediately I love how you controlled yourself and you didn't fight back with your sister, and instead you were like the bigger person.
I love that one. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, the immediacy and then praising the behavior that you want to see continued. So praising effort over outcome. So exactly like if they're working on something and that was really hard for you, or you learned that for the very first time, or you drew that picture using, this paintbrush, I know it's hard to hold, or whatever it is, that effort, hard work, concentration, focus, like what are the actual qualities you're praising?
And I want to say, if you want to hone that that teacher language even more, don't make it about you. Don't say I love. Just say you did a really good job staying patient. Make it about that child, because then what we're doing is we're helping them to develop the intrinsic value behind that. I'm not doing this because mommy loves it. I'm doing it because it's good for me. You tried really hard when you were writing that letter S. Do you want to try again? Or how just ask guiding questions, or just make it concise, like Muzna said. And I want to say that with regard to setting up basic routines, there were a lot of examples from preschool aged children. But when we're talking about 0 to 4, remember that every single stage of development builds off of the preceding stage. So if you want them to be able to kind of fall into routines naturally when they're in the preschool age, that starts from infancy, from when they're tiny little babies. Remember, rules, rituals, routines. If you have a structured bedtime and you do the same thing it was always for my babies, even if they crawl to the bathtub themselves, it's all right, it's time for bath. It was bath time every night, clean or dirty, it didn't matter. And then we would cuddle, it would be I would read a book from when they were like that, like 6 months old, right? It was read a board book before bed, maybe sing a lullaby, and then put them down in their crib, and I sat with them or whatever. So by the time they could walk, they would walk to the tub themselves. They would start to wash themselves. When they would come back to the bookshelf, they would pick their own books, right? These routines build. When they learn that there are certain rituals around coming home, around nap time, around transition time, then when you're trying to build those routines even into their elementary years and their high school years, you're actually setting them up for, really foundational skills as they age. From right here from 0 to 4, right? Their executive functioning skills become much easier to train when they're older because they're used to routines from when they're infants.
Yes, and that, I would say, even when it comes to organization, another executive functioning skill, are their toys and things organized in predictable places, like what we talked about earlier. Clothes, are they accessible and easy for them to pick on their own? Are we giving authentic choices? Red shirt, blue shirt today, which one do you want to wear? Versus, go pick out something to wear, right? All of that comes into play with executive functioning later on. So,
the routine around the sleep, like approximately what age? Because in my experience, right, like it's forever changing with every growth spurt, every tooth that's growing. Is there a certain age that kicks in more? Because right now it's kind of like we have a routine, but it's always forever changing.
Yeah, so just from my own personal experience, like every child is different, but if there's at least one set time of the day that's predictable, and then you build off of that with each stage of growth and development, and gradually increasing it to the whole day's routine, that would be the most beneficial in the long term. So right now, let's say, baby goes to bed 6 p.m., 7 p.m. That's the one dependable thing. If they're going through a growth spurt and waking up every couple of hours, that's a whole thing that, we just, as parents, we just have to roll with it. But at least putting them to bed, that's the dependable routine. Put them to bed at the same time every night, with the book, with the bath, with the pajamas, rock them, nurse them, bottle, whatever it is, and then put them to sleep, right? Then you pass the 4th month sleep regression, that's a whole other thing, and then, maybe the next thing is nap time. Maybe nap time is now you have one set time versus like 2-3 naps for babies throughout the day. So now nap time has its routine, and then breakfast time, and then so as they grow, you can see you're kind of scaffolding off of like the previous one, adding more things, having more dependable routines throughout the day. So Quran recitation and dhikr. So here, of course, this is where we flourish, this is where we thrive, right? Like having our kids in a home where there's constant Quran, adhkar, and they're just noticing the wonder, creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're listening to songs that are positive minded. What's it called? Many Muslims. That's a great series of songs too. We do a lot of that at Umi and Me. And just in general, there's so many things now, alhamdulillah, so many things. Even from 5, 6, 7 years ago, there's so many things now that are available to kids to use. One podcast, even my older son likes to listen to, is called Once Upon a Crescent. And so, I mention this to say, to look for those examples where you can just kind of insert throughout the day a constant feed of Islamic values. The stories they're listening to, the podcasts they're listening to in the car, reminding them of Allah. Even when you're frustrated and angry, just make it a part of their routine and make it a part of who they are in their foundation. Because their minds, I like to say, their brains are so juicy. In this stage right now, they're soaking all of it up and it's forming their identity. Anything you want to add to that? Okay. And then lastly, their routines. So this is what I personally have found to be beneficial to me. And looking at the research of routines and procedures, there's always anchors throughout the day to build routines around, right? But us as Muslims, we have those anchors Allah gave us, the 5 daily prayers, right? So when we anchor our day around, beginning with Fajr, maybe mom or dad starts their day with some me time before the kids wake up. Ideally, they wake up after Fajr, that doesn't always happen. And you take a moment to just have your water in peace or have your coffee in peace. Or just, open a window and, get some fresh air, practice your Quran, recitation, whatever it is. And you give yourself that time first. You fill your own cup first if you can. Then the rest of the day is, now I can fill the cups of my kids, my husband, my wife, my, whoever else needs me, because I started with myself first. So then your morning might be, work, or kids go to school, or baby is, playing and nursing, we're going to the library, we're doing this, whatever it is. And then you work towards the next chunk of the day, which is Dhuhr. Maybe you have lunch, and then Dhuhr, and then lunch, right? Quiet time follows that. Naps for kids, or quiet time for young children where they learn to go to their room. They have their own basket that you've already prepped and is ready to go, and it has paint with water and blocks and low mess activities, sensory things that will keep them busy, that they know how to access and they know how to clean up because you already spent the time teaching them. And they're able to do that for quiet time, right? And then your next chunk of time would be Asr. So maybe that time of the day, maybe you're cooking, maybe you're finishing up work and getting ready to go get them from daycare, whatever. You have a routine already set. Maybe you have that's your going out time, right? You're going out to visit someone or doing an activity, or they have a class to attend. Then you have your dinner, Maghrib, sports, maybe that's everyone's home at that point, right? Mom and dad are off from work, or kids are all home from school, or whatever it is. That's the family time. So, I told y'all earlier, we have wrestling every day after Maghrib. I wasn't joking. Maybe that's the thing that you guys do, or you're reading a book together, or whatever it is, pretend play. And then following that is bedtime and Isha. I find that when you structure your day around the prayers, there's so much more barakah in your time, and you feel a lot less burnt out, and you see the effects of being able to check off X, Y, and Z thing off your list, and you're like, wow, I'm not even there will be days you're tired, of course, but you won't feel as tired. There is 100% barakah in that time, and we know in our tradition that there's a lot of barakah in the morning. So hustling in the early morning to get your major to-do list done will bring that flow throughout your day a lot better. And of course, this teaches our children to prioritize salah, prioritize connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when they see mom and dad, take out their prayer rug, they take out their prayer rug, and they, they're sitting with us, they're learning, they're hearing the adhan, right? Like we have apps on our phone, we have, masjid clocks in our living rooms, like immersing them in the atmosphere and environment. It'll make you as a parent feel more accomplished and more productive with your time. It'll teach your kids to value salah as well. So we're going to move on to nurturing their spiritual development. So here we have more of the toddler age, 2 to 4 year old. And so we're going to talk again about salah and really how to nurture that. Because I had a question from one of my community moms when we were making the prayer rugs that day, like how early do you teach salah, right? So children learn by observing, they learn by mimicry, they do what they see. And so, we're not teaching them the steps of salah necessarily, we're not teaching them what to recite, rather, we're just showing them like, hey, this is what we do in our family. We're Muslims, we pray. This is what it looks like, right? You can even, we played Simon Says with the positions of prayer. So Simon Says, bend over and do ruku, stand back up. I didn't say Simon Says, so you make it into a game, you make it fun, you make it engaging, and they're just learning about the importance of salah. Purchase and place Islamic picture books everywhere in your home. Of course, we have, our typical books we get from the library and things like that we return, but I feel like to really invest in cultivating your Islamic identity, having the picture books everywhere in the house, having the board books by the bed, having the posters and all sorts of things they have these days, accessible and very physically present. Toys, Arabic alphabet, qaida is next to the family's mushaf. How much is it embedded in your home and in your routine? Making it a very physical thing for them, because of course kids are very concrete. One place I recommend to a lot of my friends is Crescent Moon. She's got great books. She has a really good variety of books, mashallah. And actually Pearls Academy is going to have a book fair in January. And the Crescent Moon lady, she's sending a lot of books. So look out for that, inshallah, in January if you're looking for really good books. So I'll give you a couple of examples of books that she does sell, particularly because when we want our kids to learn Islamic values and morals, we can talk to them and teach them and tell them honesty is really important. Let me tell you why. We can also introduce that through stories, because kids benefit so much from storytelling, from dolls, from acting things out, from play. And so one book my kids have is called Snatched, and it's about this boy in Egypt. He sees a piece of bagawa that his doorman is eating, and he's really, really hungry, so he goes and he snatches it, and then later on he goes through all these stages of anxiety, he's freaking out, he can't sleep, he doesn't want to eat, and then, he's experiencing all of these things, and then he goes to his mom, and he's like, this is what I did. And the mom, she's modeling amazing parenting skills. She's listening to him, she's hearing him, she's allowing him the space to talk about what he did without any judgment. And then once she validates him and he kind of expresses to her what he did, she's like, okay, let me work with you on solving this problem. So then they bake baklava together, and then she tells him now you go and apologize, and now you go and give it to him. I can't be there for that part. And I really love this example because it's exactly what we want our kids to emulate. And versus me telling that to my son, oh, we're gonna do da. But reading it in a book and seeing this child go through it, it becomes a sort of a social story, right? Similar to the podcast I mentioned earlier, they're all social stories with an Islamic framework, with an Islamic lens. And so another example I have of a story from the Quran is a book that my kids read, which is called Toys Next Door. And it's based on the story from the man with the 2 guardians in Surah Al-Kahf. And the kid, he has all these toys, and he's boasting about it, and then his friend Noor is like, you need to thank Allah for all the toys you have. And the boy's like, no, I'm not going to thank Allah. These toys are because I'm awesome, because I'm great, because I'm this and I'm that. And then what happens? The wind comes through and pushes all of his toys out the door, which is really sad. But that's what happens. And so the kid is going through this grief, and he's like, oh, I should have thanked Allah for my blessings. Should have appreciated them. And so, this is literally tafsir for a 3-year-old, You know, you're taking a story from Surah Kahf, which we as adults read every week, and we implement and we try to remember, and then you're telling your kids these same stories and themes and lessons through their age-appropriate books. That is the goal here. We want to inculcate these Islamic values and morals in them through these materials and toys and all sorts of things like that. So when we focus on this integration, right, when they see their books and their Islamicness alongside whatever Blaze and like what are your kids, like Daniel Tiger, like they're all side by side, then it becomes embedded in them that like I'm a Muslim and all this is normal. And so then when they go to jiu-jitsu, they're perfectly fine not bowing. They're perfectly fine pausing and telling the professor, I'm going to go pray Maghrib in the middle of my class. Because it's their identity now. And because you're placing it physically, it's like ingrained in them. This is who I am. This is what I do as a Muslim. And it starts very young. When they're older, then it becomes more normal for them to just see like this is all who I am. All these pieces and parts of me. It's not like Islam is here on the side, and then here's my rest of my friends and life and fun stuff. Does that make sense? Any questions about that point or any comments?
I want to say something. Yeah.
So I also want to say in terms of identity integration, this is the time of saturation for your child, right? You, at this 0 to 4 age range is when they're going to be, for the most part, home most of the day before they start their school age years. So this is actually prime time for you to work that integration into their lives, their lifestyles, and really into their personality development, which really does start at this age. And so this is prime time before they go off to kindergarten, before they go off to school. That might, for most of us, is it going to be Islamic schooling? It might be public schooling. So this is a really important time to take advantage of. The second thing I want to say is when we're talking about nurturing our spiritual development, we also want to understand that introduction to Salah, it can happen from 0 to 2 as well, right? And there was a time that I prayed that when my children weren't little, unless they were sleeping, that I didn't bring them to the sajada and lay them down on the sajada as I was praying. And I made sure to precede that and even afterward to play with them. You want to create positive associations. Remember that it's not just the exposure to the actual activity, to the salah or to the adhkar. You're modeling the emotional response that you want your child to have, that association. They want to see you comfortable, happy, fulfilled. And those become the feelings that they associate with those exact same times of day and those spiritual experiences, right? So make sure also that in those times you're modeling the emotional response that you want your child to have. And it actually helps, it's a process of tazkiyah for us too, as parents. It helps us to remind us of who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to us, what He means to us, what that relationship and that connection is. So it reinforces it for us as parents as well.
So I just want to add to that, going back to the nurturing spiritual development. For a child at that young age, it's their environment, of course, how they interact with each other and you, how they speak to each other, saying please and thank you. And also, how do I say this? We are supposed to take care of the earth that we've been blessed with. So what does that look like for children? Waste, conservation, litter, how are we eating? What are we doing with that? What are we growing? And so if they're used to and seeing people being wasteful, that's opposite of our Islamic teachings and beliefs and morals. We're not taking care of the earth that Allah has blessed us with. Mm-hmm. And that's very hands-on for children at a very young age. So you don't overfill their plates because we should eat the food that's on our plate. We always be taught that, right? I think all our cultures say that. But if you're giving your children way too much for them at that time, what their needs are, then what are you teaching them? To stuff themselves or to waste the food? And I think those are little things that I think we kind of overlook because we're such a consumerist society and we're very wasteful. And we have a lot of, like in my classroom, most of the things that I would use with the children were recyclable, reusable, upcycling, and I would talk about what we would have little containers or things that came in packaging, and we would make things from that instead of purchasing, new things that are shiny and that are not, natural to the earth. And so I really honed in on that. We're taking care of the earth by using what's here and not being wasteful. I think that's also speaks to our spiritual development too, because it's at our core that we need to take care of the earth, and it takes care of us because we're part of that as well.
I have a question about positive associations or things like that. So what if you have like a child that has sensory sensitivities and trying to form a positive association with being in a masjid, but the masjid is very loud and there's a lot of people, and even like with prayer, congregational prayer, everybody is touching each other, so maybe beautiful.
So yeah, I think that's a great question. Definitely honing in on the sensory stimulation, overstimulation. Even us as adults, like we get overstimulated too, like being around too many people or too many smells or sights or sounds. And so identifying a positive connection with what they do enjoy doing, right? Meanwhile, you kind of have to like give them small doses of it, right? So maybe they're not quite ready to go for Maghrib where there's like a trillion people there and there's lots of things happening, but maybe Dhuhr is a little bit quieter and they can run around in the masjid a little bit. They can become more accustomed to it. They get used to just going and seeing things. Maybe a children's committee event with 200 other kids is like overwhelming, but going to qahwa every day was really overwhelming too. But maybe maybe there's smaller doses of that so that you can build those positive associations that we're talking about.
That's always good. I just want to say, curate the experience for them, right? And scaffold it in. I can completely, this resonates with me. My oldest is on the autism spectrum. When he was young, this was a lot, and especially in this age group. And we're gonna have a parenting workshop on parenting for special needs, and creating that spiritual development is also gonna be there when we talk about parenting for special needs. But curate the experience for your child. Don't bring them at a time when it is overwhelming and hyperstimulating. Bring them at a time when it's going to be quieter, and let them, let them choose their level of engagement. So if he wants to come and even be in the musalla and pray jama'ah, but doesn't like the feeling of people touching up against him, then he doesn't have to stand in the line. He can stand separate from the line, and that's okay too, right? So you want to make sure that we're giving them the opportunity to engage to the extent that they feel comfortable, and then slowly but surely, as they age and mature, you can scaffold them in. And so it's definitely about letting your child taking the lead, curate the experience as much as you can, control the environment as much as you can, choosing when and where, and then let your child take the lead on how much they feel comfortable with, inshallah.
So next we're going to talk about positive discipline techniques rooted in Islamic values. So when we understand discipline through an Islamic lens, we see a lot of, we want to encourage positive reinforcement with spiritual acts, with anything to do with their routine throughout the day, connecting things to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and who He is, loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, understanding Allah is taking care of us, right? Sometimes we tell our kids like, Allah's watching you, where that might be a little bit like scary for some kids. On the other hand, you could present it like, Allah's watching you, He's taking care of you. He's there for you. He's seeing what's happening and He's there making sure you're okay. So that is the same message, but told in a different perspective. And so going back to positive reinforcement, remember in behavior theory how we want to take a stimulus and either give it a negative or a positive consequence or a positive reward, to encourage that behavior. And so there's nothing wrong with implementing those things throughout your home as well. Teachers do this in the classroom all the time too. Also, approaching discipline from a place of empathy and understanding that usually, almost always in fact, misbehaviors and things, they are a result of an unmet need of the child. I like to use the acronym HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. And so almost always, for adults too, whenever we're overwhelmed or overstimulated, stressed out, big feelings, right? Not bad feelings. We don't say bad feelings. Big feelings. It's almost always you're hungry, angry, you're lonely, or you're tired. And so use that acronym when you're approaching big feelings coming from your child. Tantrums, overstimulation, any type of like big behavior thing going on with them can be related back to an unmet need, which is where I'll come in with gentle parenting. So gentle parenting is a very popular, trending kind of theory these days, right? But what is gentle parenting other than prophetic empathy? Approaching the child from a place of empathy and understanding their needs and understanding that there is a function to that behavior, right? That tantrum in the middle of Target, why? What's going on in her mind that what did she not receive? If not hungry, angry, lonely, tired, maybe she just needed some connection with me before we started. I had a friend who used to take her sons, anytime she had like a bunch of errands to run and they'd be sitting in the car too long, she'd like start her day, which is a lot of effort, I know, but she'd take them to a playground or take them outside or do something with them to kind of like give them their fix, give them their sensory input, give them their, stimulation, and then move forward with like running errands and they're in and out of the car and all sorts of things. Also, kids get really tired. We run our kids around a lot. I'm guilty of this. We run our kids around throughout the day and we forget that they're just little humans and they have little bodies and they need breaks, just like we do. They need more frequent, timely breaks throughout their day too. So when we see, those types of misbehaviors, I don't like to use say misbehavior, but for lack of a better word, when we do see those things, it's the unmet need, the coming at it from a place of compassion and empathy, and then giving them the space to just relax too and just be.
I want to just add to the gentle parenting aspect. Setting expectations. We're about to go into Costco. My mom, I'm from Seattle, and Costco started in Seattle. And she would take us there all the time, and I did not like it. But she would say, okay, we're gonna go into Costco's, this is what I expect you all to do. So she would tell us. That meant if that's not what she told us that we can do, anything outside of that, we could not do. She didn't tell us, don't do this, don't do that. She said, this is what I'm expecting, but she also set a time frame for us as well, so we wasn't in there all day. She had a list, and we actually could help her find those things, But she set the expectation when we got in our car, and before we got to the store, this is what we're gonna do, and this is what I expect from you all. And that always helped us, because we knew it was coming. It wasn't like, oh, we did it, we pulled our holla, we finished it. We didn't have to do that because she set the expectation. And again, when they're younger, it's small chunks of it, so they can't be with us all the time. And then also she told us when we're done, we're gonna go get such and such. We always like to get fish and chips, we were like, yay, But it wasn't like a reward so much. She just letting us know what we were gonna do after we were done. So just setting. So that was, she didn't call it gentle parenting, but that's what she was doing for us.
And then understanding that their age and developmental stage, like be fair to them also, like only expect what you know that they can actually do, right? Don't expect too much of them. I know Sayyida Kothar spoke a lot about parenting styles last time, and so the outcome of that was that authoritative parenting was really the ideal one, where you have high expectations of your kids while still supporting them in age-appropriate ways, being present for them, supporting them when they fail in terms of like encouraging them to try again, not being too hard on them when they're not able to meet their goal. But even when it comes to, like when it came to Salah, the Prophet said he didn't abstain from being kind to children, even in Salah. So right with the children crying and pausing and shortening your Salah to cater to them. So this is a reminder to myself and to everyone here that our goal is to always show gentleness and kindness and empathy towards our children, especially when it comes to disciplining them. There's never any reason to yell or scream or physically hurt children, especially when they're this young. It has nothing but a negative impact on them in the long run. You will see, inshallah, none of this happens to her, but kids who go through, harsher parenting, hitting, yelling, screaming, they almost always have low self-esteem. Speaking as a school counselor, You can see this when they're older, and when they're younger, they might be more fearful, they might be more avoidant in their attachment. That's not secure attachment, of course, but it's a type of behavior conditioning. And so having that, just reminding ourselves first and foremost, like, be gentle with them, be gentle with them. No matter what, be gentle with them. They're so little, they're just kids. And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to ask us about how we treat them and how we talk to them. One of the other outcomes that could potentially happen is also like succumbing to peer pressure when they're teen. I know we're not talking about teens right now, but kids in general, when they reach that age of adolescence, they gravitate more towards their peers, they listen more towards their peers. It happens much more frequently when they don't have a secure attachment with their adult, when they did get harsh punishments as a child. They're gonna gravitate towards their friends who are all like encouraging and nice and love them for who they are and all that. So we want to hold on to our kids, right? Like we want them to have good friends, of course, but their inner circle is us, and we want to form that foundation through a positive relationship and parent them with ihsan. Finally, teaching and modeling empathy. Taking care of animals, taking care of plants, going outdoors, noticing nature, noticing babies, playing with younger children. These are all very tangible ways we can teach empathy. And also empathizing with them one-on-one in the moment when they're upset. So we talked about this a little bit earlier too, but like, the red spoon thing, like that you're really sad and you're really disappointed that you couldn't get that spoon. Or like, you seem like you're really frustrated that your brother didn't want to play with you in the way that you wanted. That sounds really hard. Let's go talk to him together. Or I'm here for you if you want to play with me. Or whatever it is, you're empathizing with them and being present with them in that moment. These are all different ways to positively reinforce the behaviors that we would like to see in our kids. And then finally, this is just a review of the types of parenting. And so authoritarian is the harsher one, where you have high expectations but not a lot of guidance on how to get there. Authoritative is the goal, which we'll talk about. We already summarized it, but we'll kind of define it and talk more about that in detail next. Permissive parenting. I think a lot of times people have a misunderstanding of what gentle parenting is. It's not permissive parenting, and it can sound like it. So, I don't know if you see like videos on like Instagram or TikTok of like what gentle parenting might look like, and you'll notice like the mom or the dad, they're like getting in the eye level, they're talking softly, they're talking whatever. But it's not just that, and it's not just like there was a joke I saw where someone a kid threw a fork at someone in a restaurant, and the mom is like, oh, it's okay, tell me about that. How did that feel for you when you threw the fork? And it was a joke, but like sometimes people think that that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's not what gentle. It's not permissive. You have to have firm boundaries, right? And boundaries start at this age. They start when they're toddlers. So no is okay to say. No, you cannot touch that. Instead, we're going to. Or refrain from the don'ts and the no's, and just like what Sayyida was saying earlier, this is what I expect of you, right? When we're in Costco, this is what we're going to do. We can choose a toy at the end so that they're not crying about picking a toy the entire shopping trip. They know that they're going to get one at the end or whatever it is. But setting up those expectations and making them age appropriate. Overprotective and helicopter parenting. I know you guys, we talked a lot about that last time too. Giving them the ability to set up their play and walk away. Letting them lead their own learning and their own play with you nearby. And we were also talking about not interrupting them during their concentration and play too. I think that's really, really important to do, because if we insert ourselves into everything that they're doing, what we're doing is they're just becoming more and more reliant on us. We're trying to gradually release that reliance and foster that independence. And finally, there's uninvolved parenting, which is just having kids, and then they just have kids. And they play on their own, they practice imaginative play on their own, they're kind of in their own world, and I'm sure we all know what that might look like. But all of this is to say that authoritative parenting is really the goal here. So following patterns, predictability, routines, gentle parenting and questioning experiences, everything we all talked about, all of these things are very much rooted in Islamic parenting.
Just to confirm, you'd like to call Korean song.
And yeah, inshallah, that is perfect.
When I think about affirmative parenting, there's the end of that, what is it, 14, actually it's 21 years? Yeah, 7, and 21 years. The children leave us, not leave us, but they go into the world, and there's a saying that the children springboard off the chest of their parents, and when you think about that, that pushes you back. That tells mommy and daddy, like, I got this, and so then they go out. They have to spring off of our chest, and that pushes them back, and that's hard, and so what do we have to feel good about? I gave them all of that, those years of foundation to build on top of, and they may spring off and say, yeah, you know what, you don't know what you're talking about, I'm gonna do better, but they'll come back. Yeah. Thank you for what you gave me, I know now. And that's really what we have, that's what our dua is, that they come back and because they're gonna test it out there, And so when I first heard that springboard off your chest, I thought, wow, that cuts to our hearts, because it feels like they're rejecting us, but they're not. They need, like, okay, you gave me everything, you filled my toolbox. Allow me to show you, allow me to become that adult that now you are, and I can implement what you did. Because a lot of the things I would say to my daughter, like, I know nothing. I'm just repeating what my mother did, and alhamdulillah, she did good, but she did make it intentional from when she was younger, for whatever reason. She said she was focused on what we were going to be later on. So I always am grateful for that. So I just repeat what she did.
Alhamdulillah. So we're gonna switch gears here and talk about common concerns. So I'm actually gonna go back to nutrition. Food and nutrition. Wholesome food versus man-made food.
Yeah, that's my thing there. I do health and wellness, also counseling, and that was a huge component. And when I was with the younger children, because I knew, regardless of what we wanted or thought, as my mom would say, it's always 9 months for the baby to develop in the womb. If we would believe it's less and we want it to be less, it doesn't change anything. It's what it is. And food, real food versus man-made food, which is all the rage now, is what Allah has provided for us. So it became 7 degrees of separation from what that came out, that ground, that sea, that animal, that tree, to what is packaged for us. And so I was really big on the children had to eat authentic, real food, and we're not talking about allergies and textural issues, those are the sort of like exceptions, of course. But they had to at least try it. They had to at least smell it, try it, talk about it, and chew it, and fully embrace, have a full experience, and say, well, I don't like it, and why, and what do you think? But when we introduce fake food, as I like to call it, man-made food, because chicken nuggets doesn't come from a chicken, and you can make them yourself from the actual chicken, but that alters their palate, and then they want something that's not actually authentic, because a carrot is pretty sweet. And there's no such thing, of course, as baby carrots. So I was like the Nazi in my classroom about what the children was going to snack on, So that was my thing there, because I knew that I had a responsibility, and even to teach the children and the parents, of course, at such an early stage in their life. It was fundamental, and it was a requirement of me as a teacher, knowing better, to do better, even if I had a little pushback on it. And it eventually, of course, it was yes, this is true. So there's a documentary called In Defense of Food that really opened up my eyes, because so much of what he said, I was like, we already know this in Islam. Oh my goodness, why is it such an issue in our community, when literally he went to other cultures, not American cultures, but other cultures, and saw the things that we do Islamically, or taught to do, or told to do, or practice. They had a thing about intermittent fasting, and the the doctor said, oh, the best way to actually intermittent fast is to do it twice a week. And we already have that. I'm like, oh, of course. So everything I had was learning that, the brain and how the brain develops, and when you're tired and, maybe you should drink water, and there's nothing that replaces that. Nothing that replaces that. No colors, no flavors. And so I was, so nutrition, what is food? And in the documentary In Defense of Food, he basically defines it. It's food is what grows. Food is what is created. We can never create food. Allah has given us to us. So yeah, it's more time to, to make your own flours. I'm not saying you have to make your own wheat flour, but cooking your foods and the children experiencing that with you and being involved in that and eating that and trying that. If a child doesn't like a thing, if their palate has not been corrupted, they may have an allergy to it, honestly. I mean, they have sensories, some things in their mouth. My daughter would spit out raisins in the oatmeal every time. I couldn't understand it. I would try to hide it, but she didn't like that texture. And she just wanted it creamy. I could just make her eat anything as long as it's creamy. She would eat it. She just needed that texture. So it's just really important to give our children real food and watch her. And they don't need to be. They don't have our palate. Their palate is pure, and we corrupt it by adding these additives. And I'll just say it's a personal thing, but it's because of being raised Muslim and being able to see shaitan and everything. But I just feel like all of those things that take us away from being intentional parents to our children is very purposeful. It's not by accident. We're in a society, in this culture, that takes us away from our children because ultimately they don't want us to develop, children to develop into critical thinking adults. So how do you do that? You corrupt them from the beginning. And the public school system, unfortunately, is has all those devils in there to do exactly that. So you get their food, and you get their minds, and then the rest is history. It just becomes that. And and as Muslims, we cannot allow that. And we have a responsibility not to, because we already have the tools Allah has given it to us already. And so we just gotta go back there.
I just want to say that one of the common concerns for the 0 to 4 age range with regard to food are a few things. First, like Sayyida said, your child's developmentally, your child's palate actually starts to develop in utero. So what you eat as a mom when you're pregnant actually does impact the sorts of flavors that the amniotic fluid becomes flavored. I don't know if you know that, but babies do consume the amniotic fluid, and it has the flavor of the mother's native palate. So whatever you're eating, that's what your child is going to crave. I think that's probably why my daughter Bayan always wanted coffee. Sorry, Bayan. So there's that. Another thing that happens in toddler years, which is they're notorious for, is picky eating. And I get this question in parenting workshops all the time.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا
So one of the things I want to say is with picky eating, a really great tip or trick that actually works for picky eating is if you've given them the right exposure to raw fruits, vegetables, grains, meats, meals, when they're in the 0 to 1 age range. Well, nursing if you can do it, and then solid foods once you're transitioning them. You can look online, there's a bunch of ways to do it in what order. If you can make your food, I'm sure Sayyida would tell you, definitely do that. You can make it and freeze it. It's actually not as hard as it seems. And then when you get to the toddler stage, I used a three-way divided plate. And what I would do is, if my child had something like raisins that they didn't like, or something that wasn't their favorite, don't forget that sometimes you need multiple exposures, anywhere between 8 to 12 exposures to a new food before they actually might start to accept it. That's one thing. The second thing is, give them 2 choices of something that they like, and the third choice is something they're not that keen on or something that's new. And make sure that you're proportioning the food moderately. And so when they finish the first 2 things, they might come back and say, okay, well, I want more homemade chicken nuggets or homemade chicken, right? But you can say, I know that you love chicken, but why don't you go ahead and finish your grapes, whatever it is, make sure you're cutting them in half. Finish your grapes, and as soon as those are done, then we'll put some more chicken for you, right? And so you just invite them to keep trying. And that's how you kind of alleviate the issue of picky eating. And remember that toddlers do go through a stage physically in terms of their development where they naturally just don't want to eat. If they are hitting a new developmental stage, even babies, by the way, where they're learning a new skill, they're crawling, they're walking, they're talking, something is new, it's going to cause disruptions to their eating and sleep cycles. Just be patient. They'll settle back down into normal again. Toddlers are notorious for not eating. Don't worry, they will not starve themselves. They will eat when they're hungry, okay? Keep the meal times consistent, but you might want to give access to snacks, acceptable snacks, fruits or whatever that can be out that they can graze on when they are ready. But don't worry, they won't starve themselves.
And I just want to add, and because they're such picky eaters, when they do eat and they are hungry, it has to count. It has to be nutrient dense.
That's right.
So you cannot, if you give them anything with sugar in it, takes their appetite away.
That's right.
And we have so many sugar-laden foods that are prepackaged now anyway. So we all getting too much sugar and too much grain. So, sugar comes from a whole fruit, not juice. Juice is unfortunately, is one of the worst things that you can give a child, and we are giving them to them in cute little boxes. So just be aware.
Or little squeeze tubes.
Yeah.
Fruit
is fruit.
Just eat a whole food.
They don't even know what an apple looks like because
they suck it out of a tube all the time.
Yeah. So even yogurt. Yogurt is filled. My mom used to have a yogurt maker, and we would make our own yogurts. And she would have a little bit of fruit. You know how you cut up the fruit and you sort of it makes its own syrup and stuff like that. And we'd have that, So she used to do that for us. And so I never grew up with the pre-yogurt stuff because my mom made our yogurt.
Wait. And how many kids are we talking about?
My mom?
Yeah.
8. Yeah.
Just saying. It's not like it was like she only had Sayyida or something.
Absolutely not. I have a whole older set. I'm one of the in the younger groups of my mom's kids. Yeah.
Those groups.
So, but yeah, I was just saying, don't fill them with fillers, and then when they're hungry, they just won't get hungry. They want to be hungry. Children don't starve themselves as well, so when they're hungry, make the food that they do eat count.
I gotta go through the next.
Okay.
I want to make sure we have enough time to cover this very important topic on screen time. Okay, this has been us. Screen time, is it helping or is it harming? So the most important thing that I want to say right now is that my kids are also young. There's no shame here. I'm very much in this boat as much as you all do. I had a toddler during COVID, like all of it. So I know I've seen the ups and downs. Alternatively, I see the outcomes in older children with my work in school counseling and teaching. And there's a lot of benefit in technology and technology tools for kids. There are plenty of learning apps, songs. There's even like people on YouTube who will talk to your child and engage with them, and they're learning, like Miss Rachel, right? They're learning good quality things. But be selective in how much you offer and what you offer, and it's always better to engage with them one-on-one, right? The default is the one-on-one adult parental caregiver engagement. If you find yourself in a position where you're offering your child screen time, number one, for 0 to 1, there's no need for them to have any. The American Academy of Pediatrics previously had stated there's no screen time for 0 to 2. And then later on they altered that because nobody was really following that. And so then they had to say, okay, well it's okay to FaceTime and for them to have a phone looking at photos, FaceTiming with a grandparent or whatever, because it counts as social engagement. So if that's then, but even then it's not ideal. Older than that, so toddler age, make good choices for when to offer and again how much. So a phone versus a tablet where they can't just click. One thing I say is no YouTube at all, 0, period. Kids do not need the access of clicking, next video. It is way too overstimulating and there is absolutely no need for YouTube. If a child, and I even mean this in elementary years too, there's no need for YouTube. The only benefit of it is if you're sitting with them and you're clicking on Dr. Binocs and learning about the body, which is what my kids do, but even then you're monitoring them. They're never left alone to their own devices. Literally their own devices, never leave them alone. Finally, is the educational level even appropriate for the child that you're giving it to? So they have all these unboxing videos of kids opening toys. It's trash. Why? Why are we letting our kids sit and watch that? What benefit are they gaining from that? Nothing. It's just what's the word? Oh my God, the
Brain candy?
Brain candy.
It's a dopamine.
Dopamine. There you
right?
go. It's just a dopamine hit for them, and it's not bringing them any sort of benefit at all. And then of course, no violence at all for children. So many kids' games, so many have forms of violence in them, and it's just unnecessary. Inevitably, you will see the effects of it the older that they get because they become desensitized and they crave more and more and more. And so as far as what to offer, I would say if there are games and things that you're able to monitor, websites that you're able to, purchase subscriptions to without ads, things like that, be mindful of what you're giving to them. Also the time of day. So letting your kid watch cartoons in the morning might yield in more tantrums and more frustrations the rest of the day. Having TV time before a nap or before bed is going to disrupt their sleep cycle. So don't offer it then. Choose times in the day, maybe, if you need to be putting your other child down for a nap and their quiet time activity, is to watch a show, watch Zeki, which actually leads me to the next point of choosing low sensory things. Things that have low music, very even voice talking, right? There's not a lot of bright sounds and pictures and movement going on. A lot of the shows for kids on Netflix are just too overstimulating. And they're made for preschoolers, but it doesn't mean they're made for preschoolers, just because it says it is. So be really particular about what you feed into them. So no to YouTube. Roblox. I know this is going up above age 4, but just as a heads up, Roblox is another thing that a lot of kids play too, and that's another platform that I very much advise parents not to let your kids on. Because Roblox, what it is an open platform that people create their own games, and they just upload them to Roblox, and kids, just like YouTube, they go from one game to the next, and you don't even know if they're watching. And a lot of times those games are set up, they're made for kids, but the themes in them are very violent. I'll give you an example. There was a really popular game called Poppy's Playhouse, maybe last year or year before that, and there was a character on there called Huggy Wuggy, okay? And Huggy Wuggy was designed to look like a Sesame Street character, but he had fangs and he looked really creepy and scary. And then when I figured out, there were toys of Huggy Wuggy in the mall, and when I figured out where this was coming from, and I actually went in and looked at the game, it's a haunted playhouse and you have to find the toy before it kills you or something. It's like really, I hope no kids. It's really intense, and there's so many scary and inappropriate games on there that just no, absolutely no. And if your kids' friends are playing them too, like don't be shy to tell them, because I feel like a lot of parents just don't know. You know, and I definitely don't want to guilt anyone into thinking like, oh, I made a mistake or whatever, but a lot of times we just don't know, and we're like, yeah, it's for kids, like go for it. But like, no, like just as you would be mindful of, you know, the food they're eating, be mindful of what they're ingesting, right? All of it should be layered for them, it should be good for them. And then to follow screen time with some type of activity. So either they shut their screens and they go outside to play, or you play a game with them one-on-one, or you sit and you read a book. Try to cancel out the screens that they just had, and that will help your transitions, because it's so hard for the kid to shut the computer screen and go do something else. There's always like they're stretching, they're like overstimulated, so like just jump into something that will give them that sensory input and help them transition to the next activity without, you know, too much upset. And then all that to say, you know, my kids play Minecraft every weekend. I'm not gonna, they don't play during the weekdays, they only play on weekends, you know, they have a very set amount of time that they play with their friends, I'm right there, I'm listening to them, I know what they're playing. So I'm not saying like zero, because it's not realistic anymore, it's just not. But just to be mindful of how often. Lastly, before we end, I just want to note that creating the emotional and psychological well-being of our kids is one of our biggest, if not the biggest goal for our children. So giving them that safe emotional space to talk about feelings, seeing their parents, you know, not necessarily seeing them argue, but seeing them work things out, that's okay. Seeing them talk to each other, disagreeing on something, modeling for them, like how do you disagree respectfully, and then, you know, having sibling fights too, like modeling for them, like how do you validate feelings and how do you work things out. All of this is all building on their emotional and psychological well-being, especially parental stress and parental coping strategies. So this is more for us to like, as like a walk away, think about type of reflection. But, you know, how do we cope with our own stress? How do we deal with our own parental burnout? Because that's everything now, I think. You know, everything we talked about and everything we said throughout today, it's all fairly easy to do, but only when we're in the right headspace, mindset to approach it and to be mindful and intentional with our parenting. And so, you know, if we're dealing with anxiety, depression, other mental health struggles, to seek therapy for them. If we have generational traumas and things that we are dealing with, to seek therapy, to talk to counselors, to talk to people in our community. Our Iman's office is wonderful, but breaking those patterns and consciously becoming a cycle breaker, like make the intention, oh Allah, make it easy for me to parent with ihsan and whatever negative cycles to better myself and do better.